Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 1 of Deadhouse Gates. I was about to say Gardens of the Moon.
I know it.
Today, we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 1 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy stories ever written, and we are approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view, and that we will be providing no literary critique. At least not about this series. Just pure love, baby.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode may or may not contain copious amounts of blood, death, destruction, and loads of life-altering descriptions of graphic violence. It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. You got to get into it to make the determination if the cat is alive or dead. So the show is therefore probably not recommended for children.
Disclaimer, we're both cat lovers.
Yes, we are cat lovers.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, so please send comments or feedback to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right. Book 1, Raraku, Chapter 1.
I get kind of excited because I love Erikson's books, but once you move past the prologue, and it's like, now the story begins. It's like, I'm really excited because now the story begins.
Yes.
The story does begin there. I mean, especially in this book, that was a hateful intro. That is the most hateful thing I've ever read in my life.
It almost feels like a flashback, though.
Yes. It has that kind of quality as opposed to being a setup to it.
Right.
So, yeah, but for some reason, I just get really excited because we got people I love. Here we go.
It really feels like in a movie, it starts 3,000 years ago, right. And then the movie actually starts. It's like that a little bit.
Yeah.
The chapter begins with a passage, quote, "And all came to imprint their passage on the path, to scent the dry winds their cloying claim to ascendancy," end quote. And this passage is called The Path of Hands by Mesrem. The Path of Hands will become increasingly important as this book goes on. This is our first tidbit of information in relation to that. Specifically, there's a claim to ascendancy, right? That's kind of what you want to glean from that.
Yes.
The chapter takes place in the 1164th year of Burn's sleep, the 10th year of the rule of Empress Lysine. This is also the 6th in the 7 years of Drishna, the apocalyptic. We begin the chapter with Mappo Runt and Ikariam in the desert of the Panpotson Odon. Now, these are two characters that Rake mentioned in Gardens of the Moon when he recalled the last time he saw Ikariam and Mappo. They were in the company of Osric, or Osirk, as he's also known. It was 800 years ago. This memory was spawned by his discussion with Baruch regarding the calendar Ikariam had gifted Darujistan.
The crazy thing about that is that for the people that are so long-lived, as we don't know anything about these guys yet, they're obviously long enough lived to be 800 years old, but think about how Rake's age is so like 300,000 roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And 1,000 years, that's last week, dude.
Mm-hmm.
As far as wouldn't it be if time and in chunks of time like that? That's like a day almost. It's so small, such a small number in 100.
Yeah, I was trying to do the math real quick. It would be like a week in a period of 6 years.
Okay.
That's kind of the similar scale. I think rough math, right? If you're taking 800 years ago out of 300,000 years, it would be kind of an equivalent scale.
Yeah, I think you're right. That sounds about right. But it's just an impressive number to think that 300,000 is so long.
Right. It is.
But I like these people. I love this stuff. Bring it.
Geographically, the Panpotson Odon lies far to the north of the Malazan stronghold city of Aran in the Seven Cities subcontinent. Raraku, the Holy Desert, lies to the west, and Hisar lies on the coast to the east. And I encourage listeners to look up the map and orient yourselves with the locations. I didn't do this very well on prior read-throughs, and for some crazy reason, the Seven Cities map was mirrored in my mind, and all of this was taking place on the west coast, not the east coast of this continent.
This is how bad I am with geography in general, as far as not on my world, but as far as other books. I have a hard time getting my hand on it sometimes, and I don't pay attention to the maps. And I've really appreciated you doing the map commentary on this. It's really helped bring a lot of things to life. But I'm like you. For some reason, it's because I think hot, because for us here in America, hot and dry is to the west.
Mm,
So
yes.
it's like, okay, well, so I'm like you. I thought it was to the west too. If I would have had a guess, I would have been thinking west as well.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what it was. That's crazy. Yeah, that's an interesting insight.
Yeah. So, but I love these. I love these people that we're about to introduce here. So excited about this, folks.
Mappo Runt chewed slowly and thoughtfully on some cactus as he perched on the edge of a mesa. The cactus's envenomed spikes didn't bother him, and the juices stained his chin blue. His companion Icarium wore a ragged, sun-flated spirit walker robe. The sun had caused his gray skin to turn olive green. This trait came from his father's genetics. His black hair was braided and dripped sweat. Mappo observed, "Your dye's running." Icarium shrugged and said, "Doesn't matter anymore. Not out here." Mappo said, "My blind grandmother wouldn't have swallowed your disguise. There were narrow eyes on us in Erlitan. I felt them crawling on my back day and night. Tanos are mostly short and bow-legged, after all." Erlitan is a city that lies north of the Panpotson Odon and lies on the coast of the Erlitan Sea. And the Tano are a people that came from the Tano Hills that lie to the east of the Odotarl Desert on Odotarl Island. And Odotarl Island lies to the east of the Seven Cities subcontinent. It's a little bit northeast, actually.
Okay.
So to get there, you got to get on a boat and go up there. Then you pass through the Odotarl Desert, and then you get to the Tano Hills.
Okay.
Icarium is disguised as one of their spirit walkers, basically. Mappo looked at Icarium and grunted, "Next time, try belonging to a tribe where everyone's 7 foot tall." Icarium's face gave a hint of a smile, then went back to its placid expression. He said, "Those who would know of us in 7 cities surely know of us now. Those who would not might wonder at us, but that is all they will do." Icarium nodded in the direction of Mappo's gaze and asked, "What do you see, Mappo?" Mappo said, "Flat head, long neck, black and hairy all over. If just that, I might be describing one of my uncles." Icarium said, "But there's more." Mappo went on, "1 leg up front and 2 in back." Icarium thought for a moment, then said, "So, not one of your uncles. An Aptorian?" Mappo slowly nodded and said, "The convergence is months away. I'd guess Shadowthrone caught a whiff of what's coming, sent out a few scouts." An Aptorian is a type of demon, or more accurately, a denizen of another plane. We'll get a better description of them later on, but they are 3-legged.
Yeah. Dude, real quick, what do you think they look like? I got a bunch of Starship Trooper imagery with these fellas. With the Aptorian.
Oh, man, it's a really weird looking thing in my head because 3-legged, you have to imagine that the front one is central.
Yeah.
So it kind of lopes along with, I don't know, they did describe it as black in color, right? I think they said it had black fur or something.
Yeah, kind of got some black hair.
It's almost like a gorilla. I don't know. Got a gorilla-esque feel to it a little bit.
Okay.
It actually more likely reminds me, there was this genetically modified creature in the book Watchers by Dean Koontz. Do you ever read that?
Yeah, I love that book, dude.
That multi-jointed, because it had more joints than just elbows and shoulders and,
Yes.
and so like,
Yes.
kind of a weird thing like that, maybe a little bit beefier. That thing was ape-like, but
Yes.
it had these really weird multi-jointed arms and stuff. I don't know. It's hard to describe. How about you? Like, what are you thinking?
I got a very Starship Trooper image of those aliens in Starship Trooper. Very angular, insect-like.
Insect-like?
Yeah. But with,
Oh, is that because of the eye?
Hair. Well, I just think of just the angular, just the weird build of it. I have an insect kind of build, but still, it's not an insect though.
Okay.
Just kind of angular, because of the 3 legs. I think is why I'm imagining this kind of insect-like vibe to it. To me, I think
like a brundlefly.
I'm thinking more along the lines of like a weird-looking praying mantis.
Okay.
Big back legs. Like a weird back legs.
Oh man. Oh, I got to tell you something. Are you familiar with a plasma cutter table? You know what that is?
No. Wait, is that where they cut things?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That's
The reason I'm bringing this up is yesterday I saw a short clip. There was a praying mantis on a plasma table while it was going.
oh,
The caption read, "I don't know what this praying mantis's quest is, but this is obviously the final boss." And as sparks were flying off, the praying mantis was trying to attack them. And then eventually it just leapt at the plasma cutter head. I mean,
wow. I'm glad they're small. It's imagine if these things were big.
They scare the crap out of me, man.
Do they?
I found one in my front yard one time, and I put it in a jar just to show my kids. I let it go afterwards. But imagine if they were bigger. Just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's like that, but like the two big back.
Okay, praying mantis, 3-legged, black, hairy. Okay,
because it's so the back legs don't necessarily maybe like not kangaroo style, but double or who knows how many joints it's got to, but multi-jointed. Weird. It's got to have a really weird mode of transport.
This is going to sound really weird, but if you imagine a woolly mammoth from the front, okay, without any tusks, that's kind of what it is. I didn't want to go down this road, but I mean, like, really, you know, if you don't see it, a full woolly mammoth, but just the trunk and the front legs. That's kind of what it looks like, but black.
It kind of, yeah.
I don't know. That's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah. Okay.
This is why I love Erikson for not doing any pictures. I mean, I understand. I'm with you. We've talked about this off air about why are there no pictures from Erikson? Because he's got to cement it. It's like there's no way he wants to do that. He's going to let everyone's imagination do its work for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
So Mappo had made a comment about the convergence being months away and that maybe Shadowthrone had sent some scouts out. And Ikariam asked, "And this one?" Mappo grinned, which exposed his large canines. He said, "A tad too far afield. Shaik's pet now." He stood and observed the tattered, dirt-crusted state of his clothes. He sighed. "It said there's a water hole out there, somewhere." Ikariam said, "With Shaik's army camped around it." Mappo grunted in response. Ikariam also straightened and noted the sheer mass of his companion, who was big even for a Trell. His shoulders were broad, and he was maned in black hair. Sinewy muscles covered his long arms, and his 1,000 years of age capered like a gleeful goat behind Mappo's eyes. Ikariam asked, "Can you track it?" Mappo said, "If you like." Ikariam grimaced and asked, "How long have we known each other, friend?" Mappo's glance was sharp. Then he shrugged and said, "Long." "Why do you ask?" Ikariam said, "I know reluctance when I hear it. The prospect disturbs you?" Mappo said, "Any potential brush with demons disturbs me, Ikariam. Shy as a hare is Mappo Trell." Ikariam said, "I am driven by curiosity." Mappo responded with, "I know." The pair turned back to the campsite they had made between two towering spires of wind-sculpted rock. Ikariam sat down on a flat rock and began to maintain his weapons. He oiled the wood of his bow and then set about sharpening his well-notched sword. Mappo struck their hide tent and folded it haphazardly before he stuffed it into his large leather bag. Cooking utensils followed, as did their bedding. He tied the drawstrings and hefted the bag over one shoulder, then glanced to where Ikariam waited with his bow rewrapped and slung across his back. Ikariam nodded, and the two of them, half-blood Jaghut and full-blood Trell, began on the path that led down into the basin. Now, similar to the prologue, I love how Erikson is drip-feeding the information in this natural way instead of info-dumping all at once.
Yes, it's very beautifully how he's very natural. I agree. You don't have somebody going, and by the way, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Just nicely laid out.
Now, in terms of the looks of these two, I always pictured Mappo as a troll type of character and then Ikariam as orc-like. How about you?
See, I agree with Mappo. To me, Ikariam, now I'm going to reference something else here, especially the elder Jaghuts in particular, I think remind me of the Martian Tharks from Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a series of books, The John Carter of Mars, which they've made into a movie. I enjoyed it. Most people didn't like it, but they're tall green dudes with big tusks on the side of their face. kind of like that. But
Hmm.
they have extra arms, but I minus that, minus the arms. But that's kind of what I imagine the Jag like.
Okay. Overhead, the stars were radiant and cast enough light onto the basin to tinge everything silver. The blood flies had disappeared with the vanishing of the day's heat, which left the night to the occasional swarm of cape moths and the bat-like risen lizards that fed on them. Cape moths are gray insects the size of small birds. They feed on carrion and mostly occur in swarms in fairly arid regions. They are prolific in 7 cities. The desert cape moths around Hisar are carrion eaters and are a food source for the bat-like risen lizards.
You know, this one thing I like about the desert for some reason. In these books, these critters become very prominent players in and of themselves.
Right. That's why I'm defining them so people can have an understanding of what they are, better visuals.
Yeah.
And then the risen are squirrel-sized winged reptiles. So squirrel-sized, eating bugs the size of small birds. Interesting.
So aggressive dudes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Both of them are aggressive, aren't they? The Cape Moths and the Risen.
I guess it depends. Depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Mappo and Ikariam stopped to rest in the courtyard of some ruins. Only shin-high ridges remained of the eroded mud brick walls. They lay in a geometric pattern around an old, dried-up well. The Panpotson Odon and the holy desert Raraku that flanked it to the west were both home to countless such remnants from long-dead civilizations. Mappo and Ikariam had found flat-topped hills built up of layer upon layer of city, situated in a rough procession over a distance of 50 leagues between the hills and the desert. Clear evidence that a rich and thriving people had once lived in what was now dry, wind-blasted wasteland. That's a cool image of these, what would you call them? I guess bluffs that are built up with layer upon layer of civilization on top of each other. Yeah. Very similar to the American Southwest, how you can see the different rock built on top of each other in layers, but instead of different rocks, it's different civilization periods.
And you actually would have that in the desert in the Middle East areas. A lot of the cities built up on top of each other.
Right.
I have that desert in mind.
Okay.
I'm a Christian, and that to me is holy desert. It's not holy, but we love Israel as Christians do. But I love the desert anyhow. So to me, it's the holy desert.
I got you.
So I have that. So for me, it's always over that direction. So.
Well, 7 Cities has a very Middle Eastern vibe to it. North Africa / Middle East vibe.
Yes.
With the different cultures that are there.
Lots of spitting.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels very Middle East.
Yes.
That's reminiscent of that part of the world in terms of the cultural diversity in such a small area.
Yeah, very much so.
From the Holy Desert had emerged the legend of Drishna the Apocalyptic. And this is the same Drishna from the prophecy mentioned at the beginning of the chapter. We are in year 6 of 7 of the cycle. Mappo wondered if the calamity that had befallen the city dwellers in this region had contributed to the myth of a time of devastation and death. Apart from the occasional abandoned estate such as the one they now rested in, many ruins showed signs of a violent end. Mappo's thoughts had found familiar ruts, and he grimaced. He thought, not all paths can be laid at our feet, and we are no closer here and now than we've ever been. Nor have I any reason to disbelieve my own words. He turned away from those thoughts as well. At the courtyard center stood a column of pink marble, pitted and grooved on one side where the winds from Raraku blew unceasingly toward the Panpotson Hills. The pillars opposite sides still retained the spiral patterning carved there by long-dead artisans. Ikariam had walked directly to the 6-foot-high column and examined its sides. He grunted, and this told Mappo he'd found what he'd been looking for. Mappo asked, "And this one?" then set his leather sack down. Ikariam joined him and said, "Down near the base, a scattering of tiny clawed hands. The seekers are on the trail." Mappo asked, "Rats? More than one set?" Ikariam nodded and said, "Divers." Mappo said, "Now who might that be, I wonder?" Ikariam said, "Probably Grillin." Mappo said, unpleasant." Ikariam studied the plain that stretched into the west and said, "There will be others, soul-taken and divers both." those who feel near to ascendancy and those who are not, yet seek the path nonetheless. Quick reminder on Soul Taken. This means that an entity can shapeshift into another singular form. We'll get into divers more in a moment.
And this is a newly fascinating topic on this read-through. And the spelling of divers in the old King James, that's actually how they spelled diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious. We know Steven Erikson's background. Sorry, we'll just start calling him Steve. Just kidding. Knowing Mr. Erikson's background in archaeology and anthropology, that I'm assuming he's aware of this, and I am curious if this is an impact on this or some kind of nod to that because of what we know about the divers. They are diverse.
In what context is it used in the Bible?
It just talk about multiple colors, diverse colors being multiply diverse. Now, again, that's just in the King James specifically, because that's old using Middle English. Things were spelt in some of the original, even up until 1900, with that spelling in the King James Bible.
Okay.
And they only recently kind of got rid of some of those archaic spellings to some extent. Now, I don't use a King James, but that is one of the most impact. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the King James in particular has had the most impact on the English language in an English speaking world than any other book. First off, it's the birth of books in particular. The Bible is the beginning of books, but people bound it together and stuff like that. That's the printing press was kind of first used for that first. It's one of the first things they ever
Gutenberg
did.
Bible?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So basically it kind of all stems from that in a wild way. So, but the King James in particular spoke us, that type of English had an impact up until the 20th century, even on how we speak. A lot of the roots of our modern English terms come from King James. It's Shakespearean, because King James is also based on an older Bible, the Wycliffe Bible, I believe, leaned heavily in that poetic tradition in that same era. And so due to how people loved that stuff, that's why it was done that way. But diverse in particular always struck me. Once I learned that, read the Bible, I thought that was really wild, especially what we know about the divers. They're diverse in a weird way, aren't they?
Let's get to the part where we find out more about them, and then we'll talk through that a little bit.
Okay.
Mappo sighed, and he studied his old friend. A faint dread stirred within him, and the thought, divers and soul taken, the twin curses of shape-shifting, the fever for which there is no cure, gathering here in this place. He said, "Is this wise, Icarium? In seeking your eternal goal, we find ourselves walking into a most disagreeable convergence. Should the gates open, we shall find our passage contested by a host of bloodthirsty individuals, all eager in their belief that the gates offer ascendancy." Icarium said, "If such a pathway exists, then perhaps I shall find my answers there as well." Mappo thought, "Answers are no benediction, friend. Trust me in this, please." He said, "You have still not explained to me what you will do once you have found them." Icarium gave him a faint smile and said, "I am my own curse, Mappo. I have lived centuries, yet what do I know of my own past? Where are my memories? How can I judge my own life without such knowledge?" And that's an important piece of information regarding Icarium. He has no long-term memories.
His short-term and long-term, he does have them to some extent, but yes, there's other things that are gone apparently from him. A quick question: do you think these convergences, is it like a annual, semi-annual? Does it occur every 500 years, every 1,000 years? I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, is it a regular occurrence in this universe, or is it just about every is it every millennia you get like, hey, the stars aligned, the gateways are opening, maybe there's a pathway to ascendancy open?
Well, convergence happens all the time.
Yes.
The question is, this path of hand stuff, that's a little bit different. I don't know how often that specifically happens.
I think that's, I guess, why I'm getting at is things like that seem, because it's one of the first things I think it's just one of the first hints of people actively seeking ascendancy, isn't it? In this series, I mean, people are mentioned as being ascendants, but we never talk about things or something wanting to find that.
So you mean like a rat race like competition to become a god?
Quite literally. Yes, quite. Oh my good gracious. What if that is exactly what Steven Erikson sat down and thought? He goes, "This is a great idea for a really great dark novel. I can just flip this on its head and it'd be great."
Oh man, it's like the horror rat race version.
It kind of is. Saul's kind of like that too, in a weird way, I guess, in a more intimate manner. But it's like
In terms of other people collecting, yeah, I don't know where I can recall any other examples of the convergence happening to ascend.
right. And I think that's what I'm kind of leaning at. Is this what that convergence feels like to you?
Yeah, that's kind of the way they're talking about it.
That's what I think.
They think that's what's going to happen. The people that are going down the path.
Yeah, because in the other convergence in Gardens of the Moon was just power pulling power.
Mm-hmm. Power is collecting in this location, so other people are going to see if they can get a piece of it.
Yes,
a little bit different.
Is it always? Oh my gosh! Is it always rat race? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I guess there's different prize in each one, right? Because you had the sword, the coin in the first one.
Yes, but oh my gosh, I don't want to look at things like this from now on. You've ruined me, dude. It's your fault. Maybe a good night's sleep will help this. I didn't sleep that good last night, so maybe this will flush out of my brain. I'll be all right. But
I doubt it will.
Is if you just rip the blinders off of life for me,
permanently tainted.
Okay, and not even as sorry, mind you.
Yeah, I mean, dude. So is Kruppa John Lovitz now?
No,
all right, let's move along.
Oh no, you've done it, dude.
Sorry, I'm not sorry. All right, let's
He is John Lovitz with a really bad comb over. Man. It's got to have a huge comb over. Okay, I'm sorry. Move along, sir.
That makes me think of City Slickers, which was, again, a little bit of a rat race. That had John Lovitz in it, right? They're trying to get that treasure.
Oh, my good gracious.
All right, let's
move along, please. I'm going to be here all night. We're going to be side referencing everything.
All right, digression
all great comedies.
Over.
Halted. Okay.
Yes.
I'll stop.
Mappo said, "Some would consider your curse a gift." A flicker of sadness passed across his face. And this is in reference to Ikariam not knowing his past. Ikariam said, "I do not. I view this convergence as an opportunity. It might well provide me with answers. To achieve them, I hope to avoid drawing my weapons, but I shall if I must." Mappo sighed and stood. He said, "You may be tested in that resolve soon, friend." He faced southwest and said, "There are 6 desert wolves on our trail." Ikariam unwrapped his antlered bow and strung it in a swift, fluid motion. He said, "Desert wolves never hunt people." Mappo agreed, and he watched as Ikariam lay out 6 long, stone-tipped arrows, then squinted out into the darkness. Cold fear crept along the nape of his neck. The wolves were not yet visible, but he felt them. He said, "They are 6, but they are 1, divers." He thought, better it would have been a soul taken. Veering into a single beast is unpleasant enough, but into many. And there we are. We've been dancing around this for some time. Divers, like soul taken, also shapeshift, but instead of shifting into one entity like a soul taken, they shift into many with a single consciousness.
And it's the more they are, the more powerful they are, correct?
It depends. Depending on the size of the entity and the power of the entity that it goes into, I think, so like rats, for example, I don't know if 1,000 rats is more powerful than like 9 panthers, for example, right?
Right.
I think the more capable the entities are and the larger the number, then yes, that is generally true, that It is a more seasoned, aged, powerful entity. But if it's like a bunch of rats, I don't take it as like this case where it's 6 wolves and they think it's 6 wolves, powerful.
Yeah, 6 wolves are pretty bad deal.
So let's go back to your point about diverse. You were saying that it was in the Bible, it's used in the context of being a bunch of different colors and stuff, right?
Yes.
So a diverse set of something.
Yes.
When I think of divers, individually, they're always the same animal. So individually, They're not that diverse, but
correct.
If you take the breadth of all of the divers we ever see, it's basically selection of different animals, right?
Yeah, it is. It's from small animals up to big. We've seen we got rats up to. There may be something. Is there something smaller than rats? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Billy. All right, I got a question for you.
Okay, bring it.
What type of soul taken or divers would you be? What would you change into?
I think I would go for a soul taken.
Okay, so into individual.
Yes, individual, because I think the divers, there's a negativity involved with that, I believe. He mentions it here. I'm not giving anything away. The fever that can't be quenched, or
Mm,
there's something there that sounds kind of negative to me. So I'd be a tiger or a great cat of any kind. So it'd be kind of like Drake.
okay, interesting. You like cats, so.
Do I love cats, man? Please.
I would probably be a divers of hippos.
Ooh, that's brutal, dude. That's a bad. I was watching some young lions young lions were bold and thought they could take down. Now the old boys didn't want nothing to do with it, but they were
Right. They knew better.
Yeah, they knew better. But these three guys were kind of like stalking this one fella until he stops and turns around and looks him right square in the face, and it kind of starts to give a chase after him, and then they all bolt. And you're like, smart move. So
Yeah.
that's a good call. Yeah, you'd be a
Dude, I love
bad son of a
hippos,
gun.
man. They're so cool.
You could take out ships in that form, man. You can swim out there and just.
Oh man, I heard this story of the South African farmer. He had gotten a hold of this hippo as a rescue, and he raised it. I think his name was Harold or something or other. And people kept telling him, listen, this thing is a wild animal. It is dangerous. He's like, no, it loves me. I've been raising it its whole life. Well,
Yeah.
This hippo had a tendency to get a little bit rough sometimes, and it would get hostile towards other people, and the farmer would have to come. It chased some people up a tree. He had to come lure it away so that they could get out of there. Several times it got hostile. Well, come to find out, the hippo ended up killing him one day. Because hippos are capable of extreme power. People don't think of them. Yeah, they got those really big teeth. They're dangerous, man.
Well, I mean, even if they just swatted you with their head, they'd knock you. They'd hurt you, swatting you with their head to the ground.
Yeah, I just think they look cool.
They do. They're pretty bad looking fellas.
If you asked people that know me, it would probably inevitably they'd say you're like a soul-taken bear or a frog or something, but not a hippo.
So you imagine in some great fantasy sequence, I could see this in some movie, like an army riding on armor-plated rhinos and hippos charging in.
Yeah, hippos are sick, man.
Dude, sick. They would be. They're fast, and they would just be like tanks.
Yeah. You think a moat's going to stop a hippo? No.
Please. These guys love water. You might have a hard time getting them out of the water. They might be like, hey, water, right on.
You've heard about the hippos in Colombia, right?
Which what are they doing?
The invasive hippo population.
Did that come from drug lords' bite?
Yes.
I have heard about this. Yes,
like 400 or 500 hippos in Colombia now. They have taken to the jungle, and they're in the rivers there, and it's causing them a problem because there's nothing there that can hunt
Pablo.
them. Yeah. Okay. Moving along.
I'm sorry. That's great, man.
So Ikariam and Mappo have seen this divers, that 6 wolves.
Yes.
Ikariam frowned and said, one of power, then, to achieve the shape of 6 wolves. Do you know who it might be? Mappo quietly said, I have a suspicion. They waited silently. Half a dozen shapes appeared out of the gloom less than 30 strides away. At 20 paces, the wolves spread out in a half circle facing Mappo and Ikariam. They smelled the spicy scent of divers. One of the wolves edged forward, then stopped as Ikariam raised his bow. Ikariam muttered, not 6, but 1. Mappo said, I know him. A shame he can't say the same of us. He is uncertain, but he's taken a blood-spilling form. Tonight, Rilandaris hunts in the desert. Does he hunt us or something else, I wonder?
So he says that he's taking a blood-spilling form.
Right.
Does he have a choice?
It would seem so, because in the conversation that's coming up, Mappo notes that he had heard he used to be a jackal.
Right.
Ikariam shrugged and said, who shall speak first, Mappo? Mappo said, me, and took a step forward. He thought, this would require guile and cunning. A mistake would prove deadly. He pitched his voice low and said, long way from home, aren't we? Your brother Treach had it in mind that he killed you. Where was that chasm? Dalhan? Or was it Li Hang? You were divers jackals then, I seem to recall. You may recall that we mentioned Trake during our coverage of Gardens of the Moon. Another name for Trach is Treach. He is known as the Tiger of Summer and Battle. Rilandaris spoke inside their minds, a voice cracking and halting with disuse. It said, I am tempted to match wits with you, Netrel, before killing you. Interesting that a voice that is telepathically projected is heard similar to as if it had been spoken aloud with the cadence and the cracking of the voice.
Oh, I guess that's kind of how I thought it would be in a weird way, that especially if he's not been talking with folks for a while, been out here being a wolf for a while.
The cadence, yeah, I could agree with that, but the cracking of the voice?
Yeah, that's weird. I think you're right. That I hadn't thought about. I wouldn't think that would have translated. I would have assumed one type of voice in my head for sure,
Right.
but not the crackling bit. Yeah.
Mappo replied, might not be worth it. With the company I've been keeping, I'm as out of practice as you, Rilandaris. The lead wolf's bright blue eyes flicked to Ikariam. Ikariam softly said, I have little wits to match, and I am losing patience. Rilandaris said, foolish. Charm is all that can save you. Tell me, Bowman, do you surrender your life to your companion's wiles? Ikariam shook his head and said, of course not. I share his opinion of himself. Rilandaris seemed confused. He said, a matter of expedience, then, the two of you traveling together. Companions without trust, without confidence in each other. The stakes must be high. Ikariam said, I am getting bored, Mappo. The six wolves all stiffened and half flinched. Rilandaris said, Mappo, Runt, and Ikariam. Ah, we see. Know that we've no quarrel with you. That tells you a lot for some things as powerful as this entity to get nervous when it finds out who they are.
Yes, it does.
Mappo said, wits matched. Hunt elsewhere, Rilandaris, before Ikariam does Treach a favor. He then thought, before you unleash all that I am sworn to prevent. What?
Yeah.
That's mysterious.
Yes, it is. Very mysterious.
Mappo asked, am I understood? Rilandaris said, our trail converges upon the spoor of a demon of shadow. And that would be the Aptorian that Mappo and Ikariam saw earlier. Mappo said, not shadow any longer, Shaiks. The holy desert no longer sleeps. Rilandaris said, so it seems. Do you forbid us our hunt? Mappo glanced at Ikariam, who lowered his bow and shrugged. He said, if you wish to lock jaws with an Aptorian, that is your choice. Our interest was only passing. Rilandaris said, then indeed shall our jaws close upon the throat of the demon. Mappo asked, you would make Shaik your enemy? The lead wolf cocked its head. It said, the name means nothing to me. Mappo and Ikariam watched as the wolves padded off, vanishing once again into a gloom of sorcery. Mappo showed his teeth, then sighed, and Ikariam nodded, then said, it will soon. I like the way Ikariam says that.
Yeah, me too.
Like, you shouldn't be messing around with Shaik. It's a bad idea.
I like new people. I know some people get intimidated by that's the thing I like about the Malazan universe. I like when we jump to different people. And I like Mappo and Ikariam, and who we're going to next very much.
Oh, yeah. When I was telling everybody that I was so excited to get into this book, we're about to meet some of those characters right now.
Yes, we are. Fantastic bunch of folks.
We are taken to the harbor in the port city of Hisar. Wiccan horse soldiers loosed fierce cries of exultation as they led their horses down the transport's gangplanks. Now, I have to imagine they're just glad to get off those boats. Because they're landlocked plains people, and they've been stuck on these sea transports. The scene at the quayside of Hisar's Imperial Harbor was chaotic. A mass of unruly tribesmen and women, the flash of iron-headed lances rippling over black braided hair and spiked skullcaps. And a quick reminder, the Wiccans come from the Wiccan Plains, which lie in the northeast of Quan Tali. I've always envisioned them as being vaguely Mongolian themed.
I agree. But did we say something different about who were we talking about that we thought was more of like the Native Americans?
I think it could go either way.
Because they are, in a weird way, that is kind of there is a relationship, that the Mongolians, I mean, they're the Asiatic nomads.
Yeah, there are members of both that are very horse-centric on the plains, right? It's part of the way they live their life. And for the Wiccans in particular, it's the horses are everything. We'll find out more about that later.
They are everything. Yeah. Love these guys, man. I love these guys.
Mm-hmm. Diker observed this from his position on the harbor entrance tower parapet and felt more than a little skepticism accompanied by a growing trepidation. Beside the imperial historian stood the High Fist's representative, Malak Rel. His fat, soft hands were folded together and rested on his paunch. His skin was the color of oiled leather and smelled of Aran perfumes. To Diker, Rel didn't look like a chief advisor to the Seven Cities commander of the Malazan armies. Rel was a gistal priest of the elder god of the seas, Male. Rel's presence here to officially convey the High Fist's welcome to the new fist of the 7th Army was precisely what it appeared to be, a calculated insult. Diker thought Rel had, in a very short time, risen to a position of power among the imperial players on this continent. 1,000 rumors came from the soldiers about the smooth, soft-spoken priest and whatever weapon he held over High Fist Pormqual. Each and every rumor no louder than a whisper, for Malak Rel's path to Pormqual's side was a tale of mysterious misfortune befalling everyone who stood in his way, and fatal misfortune at that. Sounds formidable.
Quite formidable.
Diker suspected that the new fist, Coltane of the Crow clan, would understand little of veiled gestures of contempt, lacking as he did the more civilized nuances of the Empire's tamed citizens. The question that remained for Diker, then, was how long Coltane would survive his new appointment. Malak Rel pursed his full lips and slowly exhaled. In a Gedorian Falari accent, he said, "Historian, pleased by your presence. Curious as well. Long from Aran Court now." He smiled, not showing his green-dyed teeth, then continued, "Caution bred of distant culling? Falar is made of a bunch of islands to the north of Quantali, and Fiddler is also Falari. I'm not sure what Gedorian means. I tried to find areas in Falar that may provide some insight, but I didn't see any cities or regions with this name on the map. So I'm assuming it's somewhere in Falar, but
So Fiddler is Falar? Is Falari?
Yeah, he's Falari. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The redheads are all from Falar. Yeah.
Okay, I forgot he's a redhead. All right, on. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I forgot that.
Where'd you think he was from?
I don't know. I didn't see him as a redhead for some reason.
I thought he was.
Well, I think if he is,
I thought him and Stormy both.
I know Stormy is. So if he's from where Stormy is, then he's Falari.
Yeah, they're both Falari.
Is it Stormy? Okay, yeah. All right, right on. I love the crazy Falari dude. Those every one of them that we have encounters with in this books are just some bad dudes, you know.
Yeah, very Scottish.
Yes, very much.
Diker thought, words like the lap of waves, the god male's formless affectation and insidious patience. This, my fourth conversation with Rel. Oh, how I dislike this creature. Yeah, he's certainly the character, Malak Rel.
What's funny for me is on this one, I kind of, even though I don't like him, I like him more than I used to like him for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Why?
He seems he's a little funnier than I recall. There's something else, and maybe it's the patience I wasn't really so aware of. Maybe there's something about that I like that he was just waiting for. But I don't know why I like him. I have a hard time. It's part of it has to do with the way, because I do a read and a listen. And so I think it's the way that Rel is read by Mr. Lister that made me really upset. Like, I kind of like the way he's reading him this time. I never really noticed it much because he's not that big of a player in this book, is he? I can't remember how much he's in. He's
pretty major.
Is he pretty major? Okay.
I can't stand him.
I know that
despicable creature.
He is a despicable creature, and I know that I will rue that comment later on. But at the moment, just in this
you're
this
entitled
chapter,
to your own opinion, Billy. I'm going to make you earn that opinion, though. You're going to have to justify why you like him to be.
I said the reason was because I like the way that Ralph Lester read him.
Oh yeah, I'm messing with you. All right,
that's all I got. I mean, it's that shallow. It's that shallow of a thought. So.
Diker cleared his throat and said, "The Empress takes little heed of me, Gistel." Malak Rel's soft laugh was like the rattle of a snake's tail. He said, "Unheeded historian or unheeding of history. Hint of bitterness at advice rejected or worse, ignored. Be calmed. No crimes winging back from Unta's towers." Diker muttered, "Pleased to hear it. I remain in Hisar as a matter of research. The precedent of shipping prisoners to the Ototaro mines on the island reaches back to the Emperor's time, although he generally reserved that fate for mages." Rel said, "Mages? Ah, ah." Diker nodded and said, "Effective, yes, although unpredictable. The specific properties of Ototaro as a magic deadening ore remain largely mysterious. Even so, madness claimed most of those sorcerers, although it is not known if that was the result of exposure to the ore dust or the deprivation from their warrens." Rel asked, "Some mages among the next slave shipment?" Diker admitted, "Some." Rel said, "Question soon answered then." Diker agreed, "Soon." The T-shaped quay was now a maelstrom of belligerent Wiccans, frightened dock porters, and short-tempered warhorses. A cordon of Hisar guard provided the stopper to the bottleneck at the dock's end where it opened out onto the cobbled half-round. Of Seven Cities' blood, the guards had ditched their round shields and unsheathed their tulwars, waving the broad, curving blades threateningly at the Wiccans, who answered with barking challenges. What a scene this is. It's one of my core memories from this book. The locals don't know what to make of these people.
And I say it's a great. This is also an absolute core memory here, and I love this. But I know I say Gardens of the Moon is my favorite book in the series, due to that being the book that drug me into this world. But I believe that each book, while I'm reading it, is my favorite book. And at the moment, this scene here is just amazing. I just love going through it again with you. It's great.
Yeah. I really enjoy most of them when I'm reading them.
Yes.
There's one book in particular that's difficult for me to get through in some parts.
Agreed.
But overall, I agree with you.
Because my biggest problem with his books is because when you turn me on to them, they were done. So I have a hard time in my brain really separating them from being a whole, because I view them as a whole.
Yeah, we had the luxury of getting to read them back to back to back to back the first time through. Can you imagine having to wait for this?
Oh, my word, no.
Especially after...
Oh.
If I had to wait for that next book to come out after that, I would have died.
Dude.
Two men arrived on the parapet to join Diker and Rel. Diker nodded greetings. Malik Rel did not deign to acknowledge either of them. One was a rough captain, and the other was the seventh's lone surviving cadre mage. Both men clearly ranked too low for any worthwhile cultivation by the priest. Diker addressed the squat, white-haired wizard. "Well, Culp, your arrival may prove timely." Culp's face twisted into a sour scowl. He said, "Came up here to keep my bones and flesh intact, Diker. I'm not interested in becoming Coltane's lumpy carpet. It is step up to the post. They're his people, after all. That he hasn't done a damn thing to quell this brewing riot doesn't bode well, I'd say." The captain at his side grunted agreement. He growled, "Sticks in the throat. Half the officers here saw their first blood facing that bastard Coltane, and now here he is, about to take command. Hood's knuckles." He spat, then continued, "Won't be any tears spilled if the Hisar guard cuts down Coltane and every one of his Wiccan savages right here on the quay. The seventh don't need them." That's our first spit in this book, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Now, this little diatribe by this captain does a good job of showing the racial tensions that exist within the empire itself. It's a relatively new creation and has grown through conquest. It's only natural that some of the cultures within it are going to have issues with each other.
Yeah, I really enjoy how Mr. Erikson shows the different races in total, but the little things that cause conflicts between the races here are very palpable, and it's created such an amazing world in total that it's very much mirrors any world that you would expect multiple races to live in.
Mm-hmm. Rel said, "Truth behind the threat of uprisings. Continent here a viper nest. Coltane an odd choice." Diker shrugged and said, "Not so odd," and returned his attention to the scene below. The Wiccans closest to the Hisar guard had begun strutting back and forth in front of the armored line. The situation was but moments away from a full-scale battle. The bottleneck was about to become a killing ground. The historian felt something cold clutch his stomach at seeing horn bows now strung among the Wiccan soldiers. Another company of guards appeared from the avenue to the right of the main colonnade, bristling with pikes. Culp asked, "Can you explain that?" Diker turned and was surprised to see all three men staring at him. He thought back to his last comment, then shrugged again. He said, Coltane united the Wiccan clans in an uprising against the Empire. The Emperor had a hard time bringing him to heel, as some of you know firsthand. True to the Emperor's style, he acquired Coltane's loyalty. Colt barked, "How?" Diker smiled and said, "No one knows. The Emperor rarely explained his successes. In any case, since Empress Lysine held no affection for her predecessor's chosen commanders, Coltane was left to rot in some backwater on Quan Tali. Then the situation changed. Adjunct Lorne is killed in Darujistan, High-Fist Dujik and his army turn renegade, effectively surrendering the entire Genebakan campaign, and the year of Drishna approaches here in 7 cities, prophesied as the year of rebellion. Lysine needs able commanders before it all slips from her grasp. The new adjunct Tavora is untested. So, the captain nodded, his scowl deepened, and he said, Coltane, sent here to take command of the 7th and put down the rebellion. Diker said, after all, who better to deal with insurrection than a warrior who led one himself? Rel said, if mutiny occurs, scant his chances. His eyes on the scene below. Diker saw half a dozen tulwars flash, watched the Wiccans recoil, and then unsheath their own long knives. They seemed to have found a leader, a tall, fierce-looking warrior with fetishes in his long braids, who now bellowed encouragement, waving his own weapon over his head. Diker swore, Hood, where on earth is Coltane? The captain laughed and said, the tall one with the lone long knife. Diker's eyes widened. He thought, that madman is Coltane? The 7th's new fist? Greatest intro for a new character. Love it.
Oh, it is.
The wildest among them is Coltane.
Yes. And I laughed out loud. And I forgot so much so, folks, that I actually texted Kamraun while reading that about laughing that because I just couldn't stop laughing that line because that's such a great line.
Yes. I love it, man. It's so good.
Yes. Great intro. I think is that possibly the best introduction of all time to a character? It is for me.
Yeah, pretty good. The captain went on. Ain't changed at all, I see. If you're going to keep your head as leader of all the clans, you better be nastier than all the rest put together. Why'd you think the old emperor liked him so much? Diker whispered, Beru Fend. Beru is also known as Lord of the Storms. So I guess maybe that's his deity of choice.
Yep. Or choice of swear words, I guess.
Yeah. In the next breath, an ululating scream from Coltane brought sudden silence from the Wiccan company. Weapons slid back into their sheaths, bows were lowered, arrows returned to their quivers. Even the bucking, snapping horses fell still, heads raised and ears pricked. A space cleared around Coltane, who had turned his back on the guards. The tall warrior gestured. Diker and the others on the parapet watched in silence as with absolute precision every horse was saddled. Less than a minute later, the horse soldiers were mounted, guiding their horses into a close parade formation that would rival the Imperial elites. Diker said, that was superbly done.
Yes, it was.
Rel sighed. Savage timing, a beast sense of challenge, then contempt. Statement for the guards. For us as well? The captain said, Coltane's a snake, if that's what you're asking. If the high command at Aaron thinks they can dance around him, they're in for a nasty surprise. Rel said, generous advice. The captain looked as if he'd just swallowed something sharp, and Diker realized that the man had spoken without thought as to the priest's place in the high command. Culp cleared his throat and said, he's got them in troop formation. Guess the ride to the barracks will be peaceful after all. Diker said, I admit that I look forward to meeting the 7th's new fist. Rel nodded and said, agreed. We are going to stop right here, and we will pick this back up next week. For standout moments, our intro to Ikariam and Mappo was something that I enjoyed. I love how masterfully all the little details are sprinkled into the story as it unfolds. It's such a skillful display on Erikson's part.
It is. And it's, I guess it's also good. What makes it such a good intro is that, it's his second book. So he's got his feel down. He took it's already better. It's already better.
You can immediately see the improvement in writing.
Yeah. And his writing style was great in the first book. It's better now. But I love Ikariam and Mappo very much. These are two of my favorite non-humans, well, at least for this book. That may change at later points, but for quite a bit, we see these fellows through a little bit of stuff, and I like them a lot. I've always been fans of them.
Yeah, they're interesting characters.
Very interesting. especially Mappo. Mappo's there's also something very sweet about Mappo. I always feel that there is.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, loyal to a fault.
Yes.
The little tidbits of info we receive about the past societies that have inhabited the Panpots and Odon were interesting. Like those stacked layers of civilization built on top of each other. I like that visual.
Yes, I do too. And for some strange reason, I just love the desert environs. I'm a big Lawrence of Arabia Dune guy here, so for some reason those are always great, and those things I always wonder what's out there. And he puts some stuff out there, and you're like, "Oh, I love that." Deserts always fascinate me.
Yeah, I wonder if that's part of the reason why this book is so important to me, is because I love the desert. I lived in Phoenix for a little bit. Some of the best enjoyment in my life was going out in the desert. Can't wait to move back to the desert at some point. So, not sure where that comes from, but
I like it too. I do too.
I particularly enjoyed our first experience with the divers. First, introducing the idea of what a divers is, and then seeing one was also really interesting.
Yes, I agree. And like I said, I'm always fascinated by the divers for some reason. The shape-shifting concept is one that's not a new concept in books. The shape-shifting as a group of entities as one is new to me.
Right.
And I like
a hive mind type thing.
Yes. And for some reason, that's an unusual idea. I love that idea.
Now, the scene at the dock with the Hussar Guard and the Wiccans.
Yes.
Always remember that. That's one of the things I always remember from this book. Love it.
Very much.
The introduction to Coltane in particular.
Yes. You and I get a group of people, we get a group of soldiers that we like, because I think you are like me. I always like movies and groups and stuff that deal with soldiers, the soldiery. And the Wiccans are great. I love the horse soldiers in particular. I love those guys, and I love Coltane. I'm like you. And the introduction to both these are both such important. The Wiccans and Coltane is such an important character. It's a great introduction to both.
Yes. And Diker's reaction when he realized who Coltane was gold.
That bad man is Coltane.
Yeah. But then his intrigue, he's like, I'm looking forward to meeting him. When they meet, Diker's a really cool character.
Yes. Folks, it's the same. We have the same feelings about some of these group of soldiers as we have about the bridge burners, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think of we're going to name there's several Wiccans that stand out to me in this episode that just gain my love always. For some reason, I just kind of like Malakra a little bit more this time. But I'm sure, given time, his Yoda-like speaking and everything else will grate on my nerves, and I'll want him dead. But, hey.
All right. You got any final thoughts?
No, man. I had a great episode, and I'm just so excited to be moving into chapter 1 of this book, man, because it's a great book.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yes. Great episode. See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.